Pastoral leadership of a congregation in this time and space has taken on dimensions that no one could have thought about. The easiest one to talk about, or that we can see that's obvious, is how do you, as a pastor, preach to a non-existent congregation? Yes, they're there, and maybe if you do Zoom, you actually can see them and they can see you in real time. But many pastors just did tape the sermon, send it up on YouTube, and people listen to it. How do you preach when the congregation is not where it can be touchy-feely? What does it mean to lead a congregation that is scattered to the ends of the world? Because through COVID and through having to use those communications that were not in person, many churches, I wouldn't say all, but many, I'd say even the majority, now have persons who are part of their congregation that live nowhere close, that will never, ever show up in person unless maybe they take a holiday to wherever that place is, but who are committed to being a part of that congregation. So what does that mean for the pastor? What does leadership of persons who are disparate from you mean? There are new strategies that are necessary for pastors, especially those who've been out of seminary for a long time. And some didn't even get that kind of work in seminary. But to persons who've been out of seminary, we need to help them understand what they're facing. What does a congregation look like in today's society and going forward? This is not going to change anytime soon. So how does leadership have to adapt beyond simply that I preach on Zoom and they get it? There are all kinds of other dimensions to leading a congregation beside preaching. I mean, preaching is a critical one. It's an important one. It's when you get a mass of people, so that's important. But that's not it. You need to be able to administer this congregation. How do I administer a congregation where some folk are as far distant from me as they are from each other, and that can be in hundreds of miles? So then, that's one. What are the strategies for pastoring, for leadership, when persons are way away from you? But there's also this world that we are in now. The United States is a divided nation. I don't know if it's ever been united, to be honest, but the divisions are very obvious right now. And there are groups that have risen to let their voices be heard. Not that those groups didn't exist all along. They existed, but nobody was listening to them. And finally, they're able to break through the wall for folk to listen. Okay, so now what does that mean for your congregation? How do you lead the people where in your congregation, as many people say, I pastor a purple church. So some people you have half the people that are Democrats and half that are Republicans. That's the easiest one. Not easy in a sense. That's the most recognizable one. But there's LGBTQIA plus issues that are surfacing in places that folks never thought it would surface in. What do I do with that? Social justice has become a watchword for pay attention to who we have and who we don't have and why we don't have them. What do we do with that? There are all kinds of evils, I call them evils, violence, guns, children being stolen for nefarious purposes more than ever. How do we lead our congregations in this day and age to be truly representative of what Jesus stood for? The WWJD bracelets from long ago, they never did really work, but we certainly have to reclaim the Jesus that is really the Jesus of Scripture. Jesus has been subverted by groups to represent what they believe. And for leaders of congregations, I think one of the things that we who teach at DMin need to pay attention to is to help them recapture for their own leadership the tenets of true Christianity. What did Christ really stand for? that's what this new congregational leadership DMin that we are working on diligently to try to get moving for next year. And it must be done carefully. We have made missteps in other tracks where we started before we were ready. So the group that is engaged in trying to figure out how to shape it, they have a major task. I'm on sabbatical. I'm not part of the actual group, but I get fed information and I get asked information, and it's critical that we get that right, because that's what's needed right now, congregational leadership for the present day. And we need to call it something that's attractive, but we also need to staff it with the right material that's going to be available to the people who need it.